my name is Fiona Madre and I'll be discussing financing risk. A risk is an event or action that can have a material effect on the financial or operational performance of the healthcare entity. This also includes utilization of funds to cover the financial effect of the unexpected losses. You can see this when there is a need to cover the costs related to unplanned adverse events. Equitable transfer of risk. This is the insurance as it is trying to redeem themselves with the risk of a loss from one entity to another in exchange for a payment. Premiums are the amount charged to cover the service of insured events. The International Organization for Standardization, ISO, they help develop principles, a framework, and a process to guide the management of risk. Management of risk must be tailored to specific needs and structure to add value. Financial costs of adverse risk. This includes costs for identifying, minimizing, responding to, defending, and repairing the effects of adverse event. Loss of public or consumer confidence can lead to the loss of business and income. Another financial cost would be the defense costs. Defense costs may exceed the settlement. This includes lawyer fees, court costs, transcription fees, and other legal costs. This is because the sum was not as great enough to cover what was invested in the expenses for attaining that sum. There are different grades of settlement or judgment. The general consequences would include pain. The specific would be medical bills, and punitive would be punishment considered reckless by courts. Another financial cost would be loss reduction, meaning the change of work practices to avoid future losses, which is actually beneficial, but an extra step. Another cost would be opportunity costs, such as when a facility takes too long to decide on a direction and abandons the idea altogether. The opportunity is gone and the costs prevail. An example of this would be investing in a program to push for a new car model. However, in the long run, they find out it's not an efficient way and that it's not going to provide enough profit, so they break down the project. However, they already spent money in manufacturing car parts and making alliances, so all of that is a waste. Another financial cost would be morale. Continuous loss can cause employees to question work and their safety. The professionalism of the healthcare facility diminishes, and the management also loses morale as they lose their authority and order. A component of risk management includes identifying areas of risk exposure. This is used to determine how to manage financial consequences. They may rely on a variety of reports, such as incident reports, patient safety data, quality improvement metrics, insurance company loss data, employee loss information, complaints, patient satisfaction survey results, and more. Frequency and time should be considered when studying these reports in order to find risk areas. Risk management includes selecting severity distributions, actuary models, and simulations to assess risk. The availability of funds. This is a key factor in deciding cost or risk calculation, which is influenced by claim experience, risk exposures, insurance market cycles, competition, and the availability of insurance investment performance. Predictive analytics. These are risk financing programs which are also sensitive to financial condition of the healthcare entity, insurance market cycles, and changing economics. Once this is identified, the next step is to measure the effects. There are several analytical elements to evaluate cost effectiveness: actuarial analytics, customer analytics and distribution insight, claims analytics, and risk analytics and compliance. There are several insurance models. The self-funding program requires that healthcare entities fund the insurance program, including the cost of operating the program, such as admin fees. Captives, that focuses on funding the owner's risk and returning the profit and investment income back to them. This means the captive is the insurance carrier whose sole purpose is to underwrite insurance policies on behalf of their owners. There are two types of captives. The first one, single parent captive, is owned by the parents. A single parent that provides the risk financing only for the parent is called a pure captive. Broad captive, this is owned by a single parent but sells contracts to participating firms. This means that the single parent is offering protection against a loss or damage by involving the other firms. Risk retention. Risk retention are liability insurance companies that are owned by their members. These are groups that are formed within individuals or firms with similar characteristics that share similar needs. These risk purchasing groups are formed under the Federal Liability Risk Retention Act of 1986. This law makes it easier for risk retention groups to operate nationwide. Their primary goal is not to risk a lot for a little, which is a good goal. TCOR. This stands for Total Cost of Risk. Total cost of risk is one or more of the following to determine cost effectiveness, such as annual revenues, net cash flow, number of days of cash on hand, and more. The best and most effective way to level the risk retention is to not necessarily be the one that produces the lowest combined with lowest cost, but to choose the one that compromises between financial constraints as well as the lowest cost. There are many risks and perils to encounter. So let's go through them one by one. Car liability, aviation liability, business interruption, which means the reimbursement of lost income, which could be necessary while the healthcare entity is being repaired or reconstructed. Business income and extra expense dependent on another. This means the supply chain distributors and supply houses are unable to deliver supplies or medications. Another risk would be crime, such as employee dishonesty and theft. Cyber liability, which means relying on computer-based systems and information such as billing and medical records. The network could be down, or the midware that the company uses, and there could be a lag where information that is crucial to delivering products or services is lost. Another risk would be directors or officers' liability. Governing bodies and the entity they govern are at risk for the effects of their decisions. Emergency evacuation. This coverage is associated with the cost for patients, visitors, and employees during a natural disaster, such as Irma. Labs had to be closed down, such as other stores. Another risk would be employment practices. Coverage provided for improper employment, such as sexual harassment. Another risk is employee benefit liability. This coverage deals with errors or omissions in the admin of employee benefits programs, so some loopholes. Employee injury and illness, even though workers' compensation is seen in all states. General liability, this coverage focuses on injuries to third parties arising from operations. Media expense, this may result with the need of response through advertising or hiring to manage public responses. Medical equipment breakdown. Equipment failure can result in costs associated with mechanical and electrical failure related to losses or damage. Medical waste population. This could include specimens, blood, and items that possess sharp points that can accidentally find their way into mainstream waste. This is why a third party is included to make sure that everybody is following protocol and procedures and getting rid of their waste properly, or else they will be fined. And if they're fined over a couple of times, well, then they're going to have to be investigated. Patient privacy. This risk includes costs associated with investigations or fines just to keep their patient information private and safe. Another risk is peer review and medical staff credentials. The facility in these companies or firms may incur costs related to peer reviews and allegations related to patient injury. There is professional liability. These coverage deals with injuries to third parties arising from medical incidents. Okay, so the top 5 patient injuries would be nosocomial infections, which are hospital-acquired infections such as pneumonia, UTIs. The second patient injury would be burns to the patient from a surgical fire. The third top patient injury would be operating on the wrong side of the patient. Pretty bad. The fourth would be medical errors. It happens. The fifth would be anesthesia complications causing injury. Yikes. Exclusions. These are coverages taken out of contracts. Some examples would be work-related injuries. It's not cool. Pollution, aircrafts, and car liability. So you could be working on the job and something happens to your car. That's still your problem. Insuring agreements. The insurance company will pay those sums that the insured becomes legally obligated to pay. In other words, the law will impose an obligation on the insured. The name insured can include an entity, its owners, or active directors, officers, and employees. Now let's talk about liability insurance. There is a difference between occurrence and claim-made coverage. Occurrence are the policies that cover all injuries that occurred during the policy period, regardless of when they were reported. The advantage of this is that it will cover all injuries during that period until the agreement is done. Disadvantage: medical malpractice claims may be made many years after the event. Claims made: these are policies that cover injuries reported during the policy period that occurred after the policy retroactive date. Protection for a rainy day. The healthcare entities cannot continue to operate without any positive cash flow and a positive or even profit loss accounting. What does this mean? The phrase means save money while you can as protection against future time when you can't save up that money. The knowledge of the options and the key areas of risk transfer and insurance will help build a risk management program. Finances of healthcare. Benefits can accumulate through cost-effective improvements in the program. Employee morale can increase and decrease. The risk management mission in financing and insurance is that the dynamic nature of the healthcare industry is a promising lead to a higher level of sophistication with better financial options to minimize losses. So the question I pose to you is if you could provide 3 examples of risks or perils that you've seen in your life or have experienced and explain how they are a risk. Thank you.